Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Illang, the Wolf Brigade, a South Korean action flick from 2018 that is a live-action adaptation of the Japanese animated film Jin-Roh. This was directed by Ji-woon Kim and stars Dong-won-gang, Hyo-joo Han, and Woo-sung Jung. This film has been getting generally negative reviews by critics. But is this movie really as bad as some of them are saying? Let's find out. The narration at the beginning of the movie says the following. 6 years from the present day, the political order around the Korean peninsula is shaken. Territorial disputes with China, Asia's hegemonic power, provoke Japan to remilitarize, pulling in the US and Russia and stirring the clouds of war. As a last resort for survival, the two Koreas agree to reunify. But to minimize repercussions, a 5-year interim is declared. But the region's great powers, the US, China, Japan, and Russia, fearing the emergence of a strong unified Korea, push back against reunification. Economic sanctions bring the vulnerable Korean economy to its knees and break the people's will for reunification. Livelihoods disintegrate, social unrest spreads, and the citizen protests grow more violent. An anti-reunification terror group called the Sect appears. The threat they pose puts the provisional government in crisis. Now, with the existing police force unable to cope with the Sect, the president creates a new police force, the Special Unit. However, within a year comes the incident known as Bloody Friday. The death of 15 innocent girls plunges the Special Unit into crisis. So that's the setup. Our main character is one of the Special Unit members, played by Dong-won-gang, who sees a little girl blow herself up in service of this sect. So after that, he seeks out the girl's sister, played by Hyo-joo Han, but his superiors seem to have ulterior motives regarding this girl. So, let's cut right to the chase here. Okay, let me give you a spoiler-free summary of how this film works. The opening 30 or so minutes are actually quite good. You know, the film is sufficiently entertaining when action is present. And there are 2 action scenes within the opening 30 minutes. So if this adaptation wants to turn a dramatic anime into an action spectacle, I'm all for it. So let's do this. But then, we get our first meeting between Dong-won-gang and Hyo-joo Han. And you could just tell from that scene alone that the dramatic aspects of this film are going to be a problem. Okay, the scene is unnecessarily long and dragged out, with some boring chit-chat, filler dialogue, and about a half a dozen awkward glances between the two characters, with some melodramatic, sappy piano music playing in the background, so it's not exactly well executed. Then after that, we get more scenes of mostly boring dialogue involving ancillary characters that really do not add much of anything to the story. From a scriptwriting standpoint, why bother even introducing an extra character that is the female lead's former colleague? You know what I mean? All it does is add dead weight. It makes the film feel sloppy and unfocused by overcomplicating the plot for no good reason. Pacing kind of grinds to a halt during these dramatic moments that occupy much of that second half hour. And the rest of the film essentially follows this formula. You get a few more good action scenes that kind of bring the film back to life, but they are surrounded by more boring dialogue and plot that's kind of impossible to care about. I saw the Japanese anime film years ago, but I decided to rewatch it recently for the purposes of comparison. I actually rewatched the Japanese anime after watching Illang for the first time, just to give the Korean adaptation a chance to be its own thing, because I only partially remembered the anime from all those years ago. And after rewatching it, I actually enjoyed the anime film a bit more after a second viewing. It's not fantastic, I don't think, and it is a slow burn, but the dialogue is way more efficient than the Korean live-action adaptation. And I don't really talk about dialogue efficiency very much on this channel, but it's entirely relevant when you're comparing these two films, because the dialogue in the Korean adaptation feels unnecessarily drawn out and flat when compared to the anime. But why is the anime film more efficient than the Korean adaptation? Well, outside of script writing, the script writing of the anime is better, But I have an idea of why this is the case, okay? The runtime of the Korean adaptation is 2 hours and 19 minutes. That's 37 minutes longer than the animated film. Why? You know what I mean? What exactly did the Korean adaptation add? Well, let me tell you. It adds ancillary side characters that serve little to no purpose to the story. Now, I won't mention all of them, but the aforementioned former colleague of Hyo-joo Han's character was totally pointless and a complete waste of time. Oh, and special shout out goes to the multiple interrogation sequences that were completely boring and utterly pointless. Should have been cut out of the film completely. So this Korean adaptation also gives us a tacked-on fight at the end of the film that's pretty lame and also generic. You know, I mentioned that most of the action in Illang is good, but that tacked-on fight at the end, there's no question that the final standoff is the lamest action set piece of the film. It didn't really add much. The rest of the added runtime is a blend of some additional action that was added, which is a good thing in my opinion, but also the drawn-out script writing. It takes way too long to get to the point, and it kind of overcomplicates a lot of the side plots. I mean, the anime film during the second half does get a little too complicated, I think, but the Korean version just takes that to another level. So my point is that most of what was added to this Korean live-action version simply contributes more dead weight and accentuates any pacing issues that may have been evident in the original anime. Now, on the positive side, production values of this film are great. I mean, the film looks good, for sure. Hyo-joo Han does the best with a weak script that's given to her, but Dong Gwang-gang and Woo-sung Jung seem to be like treading water in this. You know, they fail to portray their characters with any nuance, and they actually add to the boredom level, which is kind of surprising, because I like those two guys generally. So overall, this is easily the least impressive film in Ji-woon Kim's entire career. But is it really as bad as the critics are saying? Well, it's not as bad as Psychokinesis, I'll tell you that much. I hated that movie. I don't hate Illang. It's just, you know, I don't think it's a complete disaster because of some of the aforementioned positives, you know, which include the action set pieces, which I did like. But the excessive runtime really hurts the film. The over-plotting hurts it, and the weak dialogue make the film, even at its best, watchable fluff. You know what I mean? So I really cannot recommend this. And I do not see myself rewatching it at any point in the future. It's kind of hard to sit through, really. In terms of critically lambasted Korean films, I would much rather sit through Fabricated City again, or even Resurrection of the Little Match Girl, if you want to go back in time. I'd rather rewatch that film again instead, because at least those two films are kind of fun to watch despite their flaws. So, Illang, the Wolf Brigade is currently available on Netflix streaming for those of you who are curious or you're a completist and simply must watch everything this director and actress are in. So as always, I'll see you next time.